The stage lights illuminated the America's Got Talent auditorium as the evening's final audition prepared to begin. It was a crisp October evening in 2024, and the judges had already endured a grueling 12-hour day of talent evaluations. Simon Cowell sat in his familiar position, black t-shirt pristine despite the long day, his expression carrying the particular brand of fatigue that comes from seeing hundreds of hopeful performers. He glanced at his expensive Rolex, noting it was nearly 10 p.m. One more audition, and they could finally wrap another marathon taping session. Terry Crews bounded onto the stage with his characteristic energy, though even his enthusiasm seemed slightly dimmed by the late hour. "Judges, we have one final audition for you tonight. Please welcome Sophia Martinez." The contestant who walked onto the stage immediately commanded attention, but not in the way most AGT hopefuls did. Sophia Martinez appeared to be around 16 years old, with dark hair that looked like it hadn't been professionally cut in months. Her clothes were clean but clearly second-hand, faded jeans that were too long for her small frame, rolled up at the cuffs, and an oversized navy blue hoodie that had seen better days. Most striking were her shoes, worn sneakers that had been carefully repaired with duct tape in several places, suggesting someone who took pride in her appearance despite limited resources. But it was her eyes that caught Simon's attention. They held a maturity that seemed decades older than her apparent age, the kind of wisdom that only comes from surviving circumstances that would break most adults. She carried herself with a quiet dignity that was both heartbreaking and impressive. "Hello," Sophia said into the microphone, her voice clear and strong despite her obvious nervousness. "My name is Sophia Martinez. I'm 17 years old, and I'm currently living in Los Angeles." Heidi Klum leaned forward with a warm smile. "What are you going to perform for us today, Sophia?" "I'm going to sing," Sophia replied, adjusting the microphone stand to accommodate her height. "I don't have any music or backup, just my voice. I wrote this song myself." Simon's eyebrows raised slightly. Original compositions always intrigued him, particularly from young performers. "What's the song about?" he asked. Sophia paused, seeming to weigh her words carefully. "It's about searching for something you've never had but always needed. It's called Father's Shadow." The title sent a small chill through Simon. Songs about absent fathers were common on talent shows, but something about Sophia's delivery suggested this would be different, more personal, more painful. "Can you tell us a bit about yourself, sweetheart?" Sofia Vergara asked gently, her maternal instincts clearly activated by the young girl's appearance. Sophia shifted her weight from one foot to the other, a gesture that revealed the full extent of her nervousness. "I've been on my own for about 2 years now. My mom passed away when I was 15, and I've been figuring things out since then." The audience murmured sympathetically, and Simon felt his professional detachment beginning to crack. A 17-year-old living on her own was not the typical AGT contestant profile. "I'm sorry for your loss," Howie Mandel said softly. "Do you have any family? Anyone taking care of you?" Sophia's laugh was bitter and brief. "No family that wants me. I've been staying in shelters mostly, sometimes with friends when I can. I found out about this audition because someone at the youth center said I should try out. They said I had a gift." Simon found himself studying Sophia more intently. There was something familiar about her features, something that nagged at the edges of his memory. The shape of her eyes, the line of her jaw, even the way she held herself when she spoke. It was like looking at a puzzle with missing pieces. "How did you get here today?" Simon asked, his voice carrying an unusual gentleness. "Bus," Sophia replied matter-of-factly. "It took about 6 hours and 2 transfers, but I've been saving up for months. This felt like maybe my only real shot at something better." The vulnerability in that statement hit Simon like a physical blow. Here was a teenager who had been surviving on her own for 2 years, who had somehow scraped together bus fare and the courage to audition for the biggest talent show in America, carrying nothing but hope and a song she'd written herself. "Well," Simon said, settling back in his chair, "let's hear what you've got." Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath that seemed to center her entire being. When she opened them again, something had shifted. The nervous teenager had been replaced by an artist preparing to bare her soul. She began to sing, and from the first note, Simon knew this was something extraordinary. Her voice was rich and powerful, with the kind of raw emotional honesty that couldn't be taught in any vocal coach's studio. It was the voice of someone who had lived through pain and emerged stronger. "I've been walking in your shadow, though I've never seen your face, looking for the man who made me, in every crowded place. They say I have your eyes, your stubborn chin, your way with words, but all I have are questions that I'm afraid will go unheard." The lyrics were sophisticated and deeply personal, clearly drawn from real experience. Simon found himself leaning forward, completely absorbed in the performance. Was it fear that made you leave before you knew what I could be? Was it shame, or was it sorrow, or just inability to see that love doesn't always look the way we think it's supposed to? Sometimes love is staying absent when that's all that you can do. As Sophia continued singing, Simon felt an increasingly uncomfortable recognition building in his chest. Her voice, her facial structure, even certain mannerisms were triggering memories he had spent years trying to suppress. Memories of a brief relationship nearly 18 years ago, of a young woman named Sophia Martinez, who had tried to contact him multiple times before eventually disappearing from his life entirely. I forgive the man who left me, though I've never heard him say he's sorry for the birthdays, for the nights when I would pray that maybe tomorrow he would find me. See, I'm worthy of his time. But I'm done waiting for a father who might never claim what's mine. The final notes of Sophia's song hung in the air like a prayer, and the auditorium was completely silent. Simon realized he was gripping the edge of the judge's table so tightly his knuckles had turned white. The mathematical impossibility of what he was suspecting seemed to war with the increasingly undeniable recognition in his heart. That was, Heidi began, then stopped, seemingly unable to find adequate words. Absolutely beautiful, Sophia finished, wiping tears from her eyes. But Simon wasn't paying attention to his fellow judges. He was staring at Sophia with an intensity that was making her visibly uncomfortable. Sophia, he said, his voice strangely tight, can you tell me your mother's name? Sophia looked surprised by the question. Sophia Martinez. She died of cancer 2 years ago. Why? Simon felt the world tilt slightly on its axis. The name confirmed what his heart had already begun to suspect, but hearing it spoken aloud made it undeniably real. Sophia, Simon said, standing up from his chair in a move that sent ripples of confusion through the other judges and the audience. I need to ask you something very important, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Did your mother ever mention anything about your father? Anything at all? Sophia's expression shifted to something guarded and defensive. She said he was someone who couldn't handle the responsibility, someone who was too focused on his career to care about anything else. Why are you asking me this? Simon walked around the judge's table, something he never did during auditions. The cameras tracked his movement as he approached the stage, his face a mask of controlled emotion. Because, Simon said, his voice barely above a whisper but still audible through his microphone, I think I might know who your father is. The auditorium erupted in confused murmurs. The other judges looked at each other with bewildered expressions, and Sophia took a step back from the microphone. What are you talking about? She asked, fear and hope warring in her voice. Simon reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, quickly scrolling through old photos until he found what he was looking for. He held up the screen so Sophia could see it from the stage. Is this your mother? He asked. Sophia's face went white as she stared at the photo on Simon's phone. It was a picture of him and Sophia Martinez from 17.5 years ago, taken at a restaurant in Los Angeles. They were both smiling, and Isabella's hand was resting on her stomach in a gesture that, at the time, Simon had assumed was just casual positioning. How do you have that picture? Sophia whispered. Simon's voice was shaking now, the careful control he was famous for completely abandoned. Because I took it. Sophia, I think I'm your father. The statement hit the auditorium like a lightning bolt. The audience gasped collectively. The other judges sat in stunned silence, and Sophia stared at Simon with an expression of complete shock. That's impossible, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Simon stepped onto the stage, breaking every protocol that had ever existed for AGT auditions. Sophia, your mother tried to contact me when you were born, multiple times, but I was selfish and scared and completely focused on my career. I had my assistants handle what I thought were just attempts to get money or attention. Sophia's legs seemed to give out, and she sat down heavily on the edge of the stage. You're lying. This is some kind of sick joke. I wish I were, Simon said, sitting down beside her. I found out years later, through a private investigator I hired when I started wondering about whether I had missed something important. By then your mother had moved and changed her phone number. I tried to find you both, but she had covered her tracks well. Sophia was crying now, great heaving sobs that shook her entire small frame. She said you didn't want me. She said you made it clear that we were a mistake. Simon felt his heart break completely. She was protecting you from who I was then, and maybe she was right to. I wasn't ready to be a father. I wasn't ready to be anything but a selfish man building an empire. He paused, looking at this remarkable young woman who was apparently his daughter. But Sophia, if I had known you would become this incredible person, this talented, strong, beautiful human being, I would have been ready. I would have made myself ready. The conversation was happening in front of millions of people, broadcast live on national television, but both Simon and Sophia seemed to have forgotten about the cameras, the audience, the judges. This was no longer an audition. This was a father and daughter meeting for the first time. "Why should I believe you?" Sophia asked through her tears. Simon pulled out his phone again and made a call that everyone in the auditorium could hear. "Dr. Patterson? It's Simon Cowell. I need you to come to the AGT studio immediately. I need a DNA test done, and I need it done tonight." He hung up and looked at Sophia. "Because we're going to prove it, right here, right now. And if I'm wrong, if I'm just a delusional old man seeing patterns that aren't there, then you can walk away and never think about this again." Sophia wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her oversized hoodie. "And if you're right?" Simon's voice was soft but firm. "If I'm right, then you're never going to be homeless again. You're never going to wonder where your next meal is coming from. You're never going to be alone." The weight of that promise hung in the air between them. Around them, the audience sat in complete silence, witnessing something that transcended entertainment and entered the realm of life-changing reality. "I don't need your money," Sophia said quietly. "I've been taking care of myself just fine." "I know you have," Simon replied, "and that tells me everything I need to know about the kind of person you are. But Sophia, you shouldn't have to take care of yourself. You should be worried about school and friends and whether you'll get the part in the school play. You should be a teenager, not a survivor." Dr. Patterson arrived within an hour, discreetly conducting DNA tests on both Simon and Sophia while the cameras continued to roll. The results would take several hours to process, but in the meantime, something else was happening. Simon and Sophia were talking, really talking, for the first time in either of their lives. "Tell me about her," Simon said. "Tell me about your mother." Sophia's expression softened. "She was amazing. She worked 3 jobs to keep us in our apartment, but she always made time for me. She taught me how to sing, how to write songs. She said music was the only thing that couldn't be taken away from you." "She was right," Simon said, "and she did an incredible job raising you. You're remarkable, Sophia. You're strong and talented and kind. Everything I'm not, but everything I wish I could be. You seem pretty successful to me," Sophia said with a small smile. Simon shook his head. "Success isn't the same as being a good person. I've spent 30 years building a career and accumulating wealth, but I've never built a family. I've never been responsible for another human being's happiness." "Maybe you're getting a second chance," Sophia said quietly. At 3 a.m., Dr. Patterson returned with the DNA results. Simon and Sophia sat together on the stage, having spent hours talking while the cameras captured every moment of their tentative bonding. "The results are definitive," Dr. Patterson announced. "Simon Cowell is Sophia Martinez's biological father." The confirmation of what everyone had already begun to believe still sent shockwaves through the studio. Sophia started crying again, but this time her tears seemed to be a mixture of relief, joy, and overwhelming emotion. Simon wrapped his arms around his daughter for the first time, and in that moment 17 years of absence seemed to compress into a single point of connection. "I'm sorry," Simon whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you and your mother." "You're here now," Sophia replied. "That's what matters." When the episode aired 3 weeks later, it became the most watched program in AGT history. But for Simon and Sophia, the real story was just beginning. Simon immediately hired the best lawyers to fast-track Sophia's emancipation paperwork and arrange for her to move into a guest house on his Malibu property. More importantly, he enrolled her in the best private school in Los Angeles and arranged for vocal coaching with the industry's top professionals. But he was careful to do it all in consultation with Sophia, respecting her independence while providing the support she had never had. "I don't want to erase the person you've become," Simon told her during one of their many long conversations in those first weeks. "You've survived things that would have destroyed most people. You've developed strength and character that I never had at your age. I just want to give you the tools to build whatever life you want." Sophia thrived in her new environment, but she never forgot where she came from. She started a foundation for homeless teenagers, using her platform as Simon Cowell's daughter to raise awareness about youth homelessness in America. A year later, Sophia performed Father's Shadow again, but this time it was at Carnegie Hall, and Simon watched from the front row with tears streaming down his face. The song had evolved, gaining new verses about forgiveness, second chances, and the complex nature of family. "I forgive the man who left me, and I forgive myself for wondering if I was worth staying for. I forgive the years we lost, and I celebrate the years we found. Sometimes the best fathers are the ones who learn how to be fathers from their children." After the performance, a reporter asked Simon what he had learned from finding his daughter. "I learned that success isn't about what you build," Simon replied. "It's about who you become in the process." I thought I was successful because I had money and fame and power. But I wasn't successful until I had someone who mattered more to me than any of those things." He paused, looking at Sophia, who was signing autographs for young fans. "My daughter taught me that family isn't about biology or timing or even intention. It's about showing up, even when you're 17 years late. It's about love that's stronger than regret. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it's about getting a second chance to be the person you should have been all along." The story of Simon Cowell and Sophia Martinez became legendary in entertainment circles, not just for its dramatic revelation, but for what it represented about redemption, family, and the power of taking responsibility for past mistakes. Simon had found his daughter, but more importantly, he had found himself in the process of learning how to be her father. Sophia's appearance on AGT had started as an audition for a talent show. It ended as proof that sometimes the most important discoveries happen when you're brave enough to share your truth with the world, even if you don't know who might be listening.